Hey there! Welcome to the Unpresentable Parts, your go-to spot for conversations that matter. Hosted by Tim Blake and Titus Who. We're breaking down barriers and building bridges, one story at a time. Tim and Titus invite you into a space where the vulnerable becomes powerful. Ready to join the conversation? Let's dive in.
Hey everybody,
What's
welcome
up?
to the Unpresentable Parts podcast. My name is Tim Blake, and that's my illustrious co-host,
Illustrious. There we go.
Big
Titus Who in the building.
Big Titus. We're so grateful that you've chosen to join us. We're grateful to be here. Last week we had Sam and Jasmine with us. They are full on in the Eve podcast. We are focused here on I hate to say main, it feels like but anyway, we on the main.
We're on the main. Nah, it's the same, man. We are all together.
All together. And there will be times when we have the podcast together. But first and foremost, we'd like you to subscribe, also like. I'm going to steal something, and I'm going to say I'm stealing it because my conscience bugs me that way. But there's a guy that I listen to, and his kind of intro is rate us, review us, give us 5 stars, because if you only give us 4 stars, I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. So I haven't found another way to say it, so that's what I like. But in any case, we're the Unpresentable Parts podcast. It is our aim to make the unpresentable presentable. Based upon
Amen.
1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 23 and 24, where the Apostle Paul talks about uh, the unpresentable parts of the body of Christ we treat with special modesty. And so our goal is to try to have conversations with care to make the unpresentable presentable. So every podcast and every video will start with the question, what's unpresentable about you today? Titus, you got it?
Yeah. What's not unpresentable about me today? Um, that's it's been that kind of week. Um, Man, I would say probably my level of anxiety. I probably said this last week, but
Mm.
I'm heading out of town, and my family's going to be here. And when you're getting ready to go out of town, there's things that need to get done, and whenever those things are not done, there's a level of rush and anxiety that you feel. I feel that, and somebody's hacked into my email and sending a bunch of crazy stuff
Oh,
out on
Lord.
my app. so so yeah, one of my friends texted me telling me that, man, they're making you look like a fool out here.
Oh,
So
Lord.
whoever it is, if I send you something, that ain't me. That is not me. That is not
Listen,
me.
he is not in jail in Costa Rica and need money to get bailed out. That ain't Titus.
It's money. That ain't me.
So appreciate you sharing that. For me, it has been an interesting week. And so, in a very similar fashion, which I don't know, it's weird to admit, but I've got anxiety.
Mm,
Uh, Church leadership is just wrought with anxiety and circumstances. And it really, now I understand more about why God says so much in the scriptures trust in me, rest, because I got it. Rest in me. So, in any case, I'm feeling a bit anxious. Uh, Honestly, doing this is exciting. I'm excited to be with Titus. And today we're going to talk a little bit about who we are, where we come from, some pivotal moments in our lives that have kind of formed us,
yep.
and talk about our relationship. Because some of y'all
Just
are like, who are these two dudes? Well, first and foremost, we were both met and trained by the Apostle Paul.
yep.
So
That's right.
Timothy and
Titus.
Titus. There you go.
There we go.
Titus with the Cretans. I've got to get my courage up, get my confidence up. No. Uh, but Titus and I met. Did we meet at the end of 2008 or at the beginning of 2009?
No, it was 2008. It was the fall of 2008 because
Okay.
that's when you were at Southern.
Okay. We met at Southern Connecticut State University.
Go
Titus was
out,
the
go
house.
out.
Titus was an RA in the dorms.
Yep,
Uh,
Chase Hall.
I was a campus minister slash
Yeah,
singles minister,
yep,
and so we were in Hartford, Connecticut, generally the suburbs of Hartford, Newington. So we drive down, and Titus was brought out by his now wife, Shayla. Came out to a small Bible study group, and that first Bible talk, were you dressed in your right mind, Titus?
I wouldn't say so. I think I was definitely inspired. The Bible is inspirational, and the Spirit of God allows people to be inspired. I was
Oh, stop
inspired.
that!
I was
Stop
not
that!
inspired by the Spirit of the Lord.
Oh, okay, we are gonna be real, because I was like, you definitely had a spirit.
I was inspired, but it was not by the Spirit of the Lord. Um,
The spirit of Mary Jane.
yep, I was inspired by Mary, first name Mary, last name Jane. So
Come
that's who I
on,
was inspired by.
you have to Google it if you don't know. But
If you know, you know.
if you know, you know. We met at that Bible talk, and we call them Bible talks in our fellowship. They're small group Bible studies down on the campus, and had a great time. Just great time getting to know each other.
Yep.
And Titus, you became a Christian or got baptized. May what?
May 2009. That's when I made the decision to repent, get baptized, and got in that water. Allowed, you know, my life changed. My life changed on that day, I believe.
Mm.
So, yep, May 2009.
I think we
In
were all
Hartford,
wearing like
was it Hartford? No, it was New Britain. It was New
New
Britain,
Britain. Yeah,
Connecticut.
yeah, New Britain. I
Hard
think we
hitting
were
New
all wearing like 3X. You guys wearing 3X t-shirts.
Britain.
Yeah, it was a different era. It was pre skinny jean or right at the beginning of skinny jean
Right
era.
at the beginning, because I remember Lil Wayne with the skinny jeans.
Hmm.
I remember that. So yeah, '09, '09. Wow.
And for me, for those that don't know, obviously I I became a Christian in 1989. So literally, wait a minute, how many years? 20 years before. June of 89.
Yeah, that was a
20
year before, a year after I was born.
Goodness gracious, I'm old. But in any case, but Titus and I, our birthdays are on the same day. Uh,
Same day.
we have known each other since 2008.
Yep,
Um, man, we've been through it.
we have.
We've been through it a lot.
We've been through it
And
through the relationships.
I think Titus and I, we both get on each other's nerves. Can we agree with that?
Facts. Yep.
And it's like, kind of big brother, little brother, and then little brother grows and grows. And Titus is probably one of my favorite people on the planet, if I'm being honest. Not just,
I paid him to say that.
but no, really, he has been probably one of the greatest blessings in my life since we've met. I mean, obviously, I've got my youngest son was also born in 2009, Tristan.
Yep.
So you don't
True.
top that,
Nah.
but literally as a partner, as a friend, and we definitely had ups and downs. I think 2021, somewhere about May to June 2021 until summer of 2022, we didn't talk.
Not much. Didn't
No,
talk
not
for.
at all.
Yeah.
Maybe
Not.
text.
We text here and there. So for context, my wife often jokes and says like we talk every day, like we communicate in some way, whether on the phone or text. And so during that summer, I was going through a transition at a job, and a couple of friends were going through transitions, and then and Tim, you and I, we had a disagreement that we didn't see eye to eye on how to handle the situation, right?
Mm.
And I think like both of us are some sensitive cats.
We are. Oh my gosh.
I mean, that's just what it is, right? And so we respond how we respond, and it took the love and commitment of both of our wives to say, y'all need to cut this out.
Mm.
Um, and then in Orlando, we had a conference. Our group of churches had a conference in Orlando, and that's where we knew we were going to see each other, and so we saw each other and we talked, and shed some tears and talked through it. And then it was kind of like people say, you just pick back up where you left off, and
Yeah.
it wasn't for whoever's listening to this saying like, well, you just didn't talk for a year and you just picked. Yes, like we talked, like our conversation was long. Yeah, it wasn't just like, oh, hey, what's up,
Hmm.
man? I haven't seen you in a year. No, it was a long conversation. Apologies were made. Forgiveness was extended on both parts, and reconciliation happened.
Hmm.
And I think that allowed our relationship, I feel like, to grow in a
Yeah.
way that I feel like it needed to, because I think for the most part we've always been like big brother, little brother, and it still are. But I think that allowed us to kind of move a little closer to mutual like
Yes.
respect and relationship, and
Yes.
because we had to work through um, that dynamic,
Hmm.
and so Tim is, he's older than me, um,
Just a
and
bit.
he's more mature than me. And so for that to happen, like I think his humility to be willing to say like, hey, let's work this out, and to get in that space just says a lot about obviously your character, bro. Like which you know I'm grateful. I'm grateful that we were able to work it out. And my wife told me afterwards, she was like it's like you're happy again. I was like, well, I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't talking to one of my best friends, like, and so that made it weird.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And the
Yep.
funny part was we didn't have, I know Titus said disagreement, but it was like a silent disagreement.
Yes.
Like it was
Yes.
a silent thing. It was like, I was like, I know what he's feeling. I ain't
Yep.
calling him. And he
Yep.
was like, I know, I was like, I ain't calling him. And I know he was thinking, nah, I ain't
Yep.
calling that dude.
Yep. That's yeah.
And so we just didn't talk.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. It
and
wasn't like a fight or
no,
anything
no.
like that. It was never that. It was more so just like, all right, both stubborn. Um,
Mm.
yeah, both stubborn, sensitive. So that's an interesting mix, right? Stubborn and sensitive.
Bro, the worst mix. I remember Anton Ivy. I think he's in Atlanta now, but he was trying to mentor me. He said, Tim, he said, you got the worst mix. He goes, you got arrogance and insecurity. It's like sensitivity and stubbornness, the worst. So,
Go
but
together.
no, it's funny. I remember that talk at the bottom of the stairs, at the bottom of this
Yep.
big escalator, and I think what it for me in growing, and I've learned this being married now almost 23 years, is like we're not the same people. Like
Mm.
you're not the same campus student. You're not
Yep.
the same dude. I'm not the same young married dude. Figuring
Right.
it out. And I think through time and hardship and losses and our maturity and walk with God, your walk with God has been so inspiring, and the things that you've been learning. I think that's what I missed in that year of friendship is you
Mm.
always question and ask, and have insightful questions, and
Mm.
I think to see your growth and you really heard me. Like I was hurting, and I felt like I didn't have the emotional energy to reach out. You were hurting because of the transition you were going through,
Right.
and you know, all of our kind of drama and trauma was bumping up against each other. And we're just so. I think I'm grateful for God's grace because we're able to to
Amen.
piece it up
Right.
and move forward.
And we move forward.
And
That we did.
here
Here we
we
are.
are. And one last thing about us, real quick, is I've always said, and I think Titus agreed, because we're so much alike in some ways, that we could never work together.
Oh no! Don't say that out loud. Don't say that on record.
I literally, I said that, but I said that about one of my other best friends in the world, Dave Piker, and I was like, I love Dave. Dave's my guy. I learned so much. I sit at his feet and learn, but we can't work together because our styles are different. We like being in the same space. Now, what I've realized, come to realize, is that that's not necessarily true. You,
Hmm.
you know, again, with humility and you can do it. And so I think,
Right.
so anyway, we could definitely work together, and we are doing so now.
It's funny because that's that statement, which I've shared with people, jokingly, and said it to people
Hmm.
at different points. It's been used against me. Well, if you can't work with the brother who baptized you, then who can you work with, man? You're just so prideful.
Yes.
You
But
they
saying,
really are.
Tim, all your friends you say you can't work with, so it's got to be you. It's like, nah. Anyway,
Yeah, it's Jesus. Got to love people and
Jesus.
move forward.
So in our original podcast, Titus, we shared you came from I keep whenever I want to say Democratic Republic of Congo, I would say Dominican Republic.
The
I've been to
Dominican
DR too
Republic,
much.
DR.
So your kind of formation there, like you moved here when you were 11?
Yeah, I moved here when I was 11. Straight from I didn't actually come straight from Congo.
Okay.
So I was born in Congo, and we lived there until I was 5, and then we moved to the Republic of Congo for a bit, and then we moved to Zambia. Again, I can have all of this mixed up. I was a kid,
Yeah, yeah.
and we moved to Zambia, to Lusaka, and then I moved to South Africa for moved. I went to South Africa to use the bathroom for 1 month, and then I came to the States.
Okay.
Yeah, and I came to the States at 11.
And you came straight to Connecticut?
Straight to New York Airport, JFK. And it was, all right, I got to say this. So it was December 30th, I think. Um, but when I came here, I'd never seen snow before.
Okay.
And it was in December when we got here, right? Living below the equator,
Hmm.
you don't see snow. And I flew here, and I remember when we got to the airport, it was cold. I had this little jacket. It was like bright pink, not bright blue and pink and different colors. And I remember asking my dad, like, what is that stuff coming out of the sky? Like, that's not rain. Like, what is that?
Hmm.
Uh, I remember he kind of just chuckling. He was like, it's snow. And so, but the first time I saw snow, I was 11. Was when I first saw the snow, and so that was an interesting experience.
Mm. And so tell me if the history right. Was your father a minister there?
Yep,
Okay, so
yep.
he was a minister
My
before he
dad
got
was a
here.
preacher, pastor, minister, whatever you want to call it. He was that guy that leads a church.
Okay. And so is that how your faith got formed? Like you're kind of if you were to talk about your origins and your faith, where did that start for you?
I would say it started there. Like my parents encouraged us to go to church with them every Sunday.
Nah, don't say encourage. You got African parents. They ain't no encouragement. Get dressed.
Yeah,
Get your
you're
exactly.
going to church. That's it. But no, seriously, like my mom um, would pray with us, pray for us often, and one of the fondest memories, like recently, my brother sent a message to us, and can't remember the guy's name on what's that Christian group that's really
Elevation worship or
not black dude.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The out of Atlanta. I know you're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I
I
can't
can't
remember his
remember the
name.
name, but dude has a song, and then he's Haitian, and so at some point in the song, his mom starts praying, and my brother sent that to us, and he was like, "This reminds me of mom
Mm,
praying for us every time." Because my mom, I don't care what we're doing, where we're going to pray before we leave this house, you know.
mm.
So and then my dad up there preaching, um, and so I remember like just growing up in that household, we prayed a lot. That's I don't know if you remember this, Tim, but when I started coming around to our tribe, one of the things that I said was, we it doesn't seem like we pray. We don't pray.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I remember we were in the car, and you were like, we were driving my Honda Civic, and you were like, "So Tim, it doesn't seem like we do a lot of praying here."
Yep.
And honestly, I was real convicted, but I was like, "Shut up, kid."
Yeah, so that was my formation, really, like just my household, my parents encouraging us to pray, read the Bible, praying for us often, all the time.
Mm.
That's really what it was. My parents.
And like, when do you, I kind of know the story. I don't want to treat it like no doggone interview. But when did your
Right.
faith kind of go off the rails when you got to the States? Like, you go straight to Connecticut to Bridgeport when you guys got here?
Oh
In
yeah,
essence,
BPT. Yeah, so
Murderport.
we went to Bridgeport, and we lived there, and I think, I mean, I was on a straight and narrow for the entire time. Nah, until until I was 14. When I was 14 is when my life shifted a little bit. That I want to say the typical story, but yeah, it was the typical story where I met some friends, and we started experimenting with things that my parents didn't raise me. I started experimenting and going out of the bounds and the boundaries that were set growing up, right? Like
Hmm.
the beliefs systems, even.
Yep.
And so the dynamic changed when I was in high school around, 14, 13, 14, around that time, freshman in high school.
Mm.
Yep.
And you tell me how far you want to go with the story. There was a story about law enforcement and the spirit of the Lord pass it over you. I remember that being a turning point, but
Yeah, that was a turning point. But I think one of the hmm, yeah, that was definitely a turning point. But I also think, like, when a friend was murdered
mm, that's right.
in 11th grade, like that really did something to me. When Yeah, I won't even mention the name, but um, it was that moment at this person's uh, at their wake, where I remember standing there saying, "Hey, get up! Like, all right, dude, you got to get up! Like, you got
Mm,
to get up!" And then afterwards, I was still in shock. Obviously, the wake was, I think, a few days after the
hmm.
incident. And I said, you got to get up. You got to get up. And then somebody behind me, I can't remember which person it was, they say, yo, Ty, he's not getting up. And then I walked out, and I remember Miss Parker, Miss Parker, Miss Parker. But Miss Parker, I remember she hugged me, and we just cried, and she said, Titus, please don't let that be you.
Mm,
Don't let that be you. You have family who loves you. I'm like, he has family who loves him. Like, and she was like, just please don't let that be you. And like, yeah, something just snapped. Um, and I remember, like, I was like, all right, I can't be carrying this stuff around me anymore, and I need to try to change. And I did. After that, I started going to school with a shirt and tie, my senior year. And so I did that for a bit, which led to me, through a series of events, I ended up speaking at our graduation. I was one of the keynote speakers
oh,
at our graduation, which was wild. I feel like, looking back, it's like God, um, God was setting me up, kind of,
Mm,
for what was ahead.
mm.
Yeah, but yeah, it was really cool.
That's interesting. I think you're. I know you always mention Mr. G.
Yep.
Mr. G is one of the people that was pivotal in your life. Like every time you come, just for those that every time Titus comes back to Connecticut and he speaks, Mr. G is right there, and they go
Mr.
out to
G's
eat.
there. Yeah.
And
Mr. G's always there, man. That's my dude. Mr. G was one of the people. I went to his room. I remember the next day after this happened, like, this happened on a Friday, and then that Monday, I was in Mr. G's room, and it was surreal. Like, I remember going to the bathroom and I couldn't get up because I just fell and I was crying. And then he came in, got me up, and we walked back to his classroom. And yeah, and another friend was there too. But Mr. G's always been there. There's a picture in our room, in our living room, with Mr.
mhm.
G and Mrs. G.
I'm so
Um,
grateful that's not in your bedroom. I'm so
nah,
grateful you said your room. I was like, come on, dog.
our living room, in our living room,
Okay, okay.
in our living room. I make sure that I tell people, like, yeah, it's one of my uncles, and it's,
Mm,
you know, Mr. G is Italian, and obviously I am not Italian,
yeah.
and so people always have a reaction when they see that picture that's
Hmm.
up there, and they say, what's the connection here? And
Mm,
he's a great friend. Yeah, like Tim mentioned, every time I come up to Connecticut, if I'm preaching, Mr. G would drive an hour just to come
mm,
see me, and if I bring the family, of course, he's going to be there. But whenever I'm in Connecticut, he makes a point to come and visit, and so yeah, those it's one of my favorite relationships there, Mr. G.
mm. It's it's fun for me to hear people's stories
Hmm.
because you're able to see God and His Spirit working way, way, way before,
Way before, right,
long before we ever respond to Him. Like
right.
He's setting things up that I think about, and I may be getting the context all wrong on how I use it, but for me, it's important. It's Second Samuel 14:14,
Mm.
where this woman says to say, actually, she says to Saul, who raised as he was raising Samuel. No, 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 no. It was about Absalom. It's about Absalom, and he says, uh, as water poured on the ground cannot be recovered, so we almost die. But God devises ways
Hmm.
uh, to bring back the estranged. I'm paraphrasing. It's one of my favorite passages, but how God is always working to get us
Yep.
back home. And Mr. G, Miss Parker, uh, all of those circumstances to
Right.
get you to a place. Speaking at your high school graduation, you're at Southern, you're an RA, you meet Shayla, or she met you, you met one another.
We met one another.
And, and God really using faith that had been planted in by your mom and your
Yep.
dad, all those
Yep.
experiences, and to get you to a place. And now you out here a minister getting your master's in divinity.
Masters in Divinity, man. It's crazy. I never imagined that I would be doing this, because I had an opportunity right after college,
Mm-hmm.
to go and get this degree, but I was like, nah, I'm not going to do this. But again, I think God was preparing me through all of it. God was preparing me, and I feel like I was ready this time to go to grad school. 10 years later, I was finally ready to go and get my MDiv at Lipscomb University. Shout out to Lipscomb University out there in Nashville, Tennessee.
Come
And
on.
so I love my program, man. If anybody's thinking about this, is a shout out to Lipscomb. Anybody thinking about going to grad school, go to Lipscomb.
For
Do
their
this MDiv.
divinity.
Divinity School. Yep.
Yep.
Hayslip School of Theology.
And
Hayslip School.
Titus, well, well, I'll let you share at some point, but I'm sure it will be Dr. Walelo at some point, knowing you. But after all this work with these two kids, who knows?
Yes.
Um,
We'll see where
yeah,
the Lord.
Titus. For me, Titus is always he's curious. He's a great thinker. I mean, got his degree in English. So he's just very unique, and I'm super. I know this ain't no Titus Puff time, but to keep it
Nah,
real, I told him before he's one of my favorite people. Titus is he's honestly he's brilliant. He has one of the interesting things about Titus is literally every age group. He can connect with every stinking age group. From the kids, he can kick it with them. He is a child at heart, but
yeah.
to some of our oldest brothers, I know. Weren't you talking to Gordon Ferguson, Tom Jones? Is it Tom Jones?
Tom Jones.
Tom Jones is your guy. But
Mhm.
that's just your Titus literally can relate and is curious, and it's his curiosity all across all demographics. And even within our fellowship, the thing that's been amazing for me is to see like how many relationships that Titus has been able to have. It's amazing. But in any case, enough about you, dog.
Enough
Okay.
about me, man. Enough about me. Let's not make this about me. So tell the audience, Tim, a little bit about your background, your journey, and how you got to this point, right? Before we move on to the next part of our discussion.
Um, well, for me, again, I was born in San Diego. I was uh, a mistake. We'll put it that way. Well, a mistake of man, planned by God. My
Yeah.
parents had my brother and sister. They were 12 and 10 years older than me, and I was kind of like a oops baby. At the end of the '60s, my dad had retired from the Air Force with disability, so uh, I wasn't playing. But and so he was out of the military, and so they started their undergrad and grad school degrees while I was growing up. My brother and sister were in high school and then off to college, and so, but the neighborhood that I grew up in initially had everybody in it, and the reason I share that and that's important to me is because it really helped shape my worldview. Uh,
Right.
Across the street, we had the Sewsburys. They were black. The Nehematas were the house next to them across the street. Tim Nehemata was one of my best friends, and they
Mm,
were Samoan.
mm,
And so, in to the house to the right of the Sewsburys were the Lees, Victor Lee. I forgot his sister's name, but they were literally first generation. Parents spoke no English. Uh, and then we had two houses up from us. We had the Menachis.
mm.
They were Italian, and so and
Hold
Italian
on.
Italian.
What were the Lees? What were the Lees?
Oh, I'm sorry. The Lees were Chinese. The Lees
Okay.
were Chinese, and so and then we had the Hardricks, which is interesting. They were Hispanic. We had white people. We had black people. We had everything on the. Oh, and my mom, one of my mom and dad's best friends on the block, were Filipino, and
Mm,
so but we just had like this whole like mix on the street. It was middle class in San Diego in the '70s, and it was that
yeah.
kind of formed my world. To be able to look around and like we're all in the block, we're playing football in the street, playing basketball.
Right.
I walked to school, and one of my other best friends was Gus Lopez, so he and his family they were Mexican, and I'm speaking Spanish to them, learning Spanish, all that kind of stuff. And
Against
so
Spanish, bro. That's cap.
well,
We
you know
don't
what I mean. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. Hola, cómo está?
como
Tacos,
está.
burritos. At the time, I'm second grade.
Yeah.
But it was a very, it just helped form kind of my worldviews. Like, oh, everybody get along. Everybody, and I was comfortable with all different cultures.
Right.
And so then we moved. My parents did well, and we moved to La Jolla, which is you'll have to Google it. It's one of the nicest parts of San Diego. We were the only black family. And so my family, again, I'm a bit older, generational differences. My parents were born in 36, 39. And they didn't tell me until like the day before we're about to move. And we're like,
Mm,
we're moving. And I'm literally remember driving or riding my bike in the street and I'm crying. And because it was basically you're taking my whole world away for no reason. And
right.
similar to you, being displaced from a culture, even though you moved around a bit, but
Right.
displaced from a culture where everyone looked like you and all that stuff, coming to a place. where the weather is different, everything is different. And
Right.
so, I grew up going to, an all white school, had never been called the N word before. And just by the way, on this podcast, we may actually use the real words. So if you hear the word nigger, it's only for context,
Yep.
just
Just so
so
you
we
know.
all know that. And so that's the first time, because a majority of the people there, the only black people they had ever seen or been in their bubble, were actually, well, not in their bubble, were on TV. Good
Yeah.
Times and Jefferson. So people were like, "Oh, hey man, give me five,
Give me
give me
five.
five on the black hand side," all that stuff. That's kind of how, you know. And so in one sense, we had the privilege, parents had the bins. We're in this nice area, but in another sense, I'm like, these kids don't know me. And
Mm,
so what he did for me, it helped me to learn how to get in where I fit in.
right.
One of my best friends at that time was Jason Howell. He was a big
Get in
old
where I
English
fit in.
dude. What'd you
What
say?
does that mean? Get in where I
Get
fit in?
basically you find your space.
Yeah.
Like, you know. And so but Jason Howell, he was one of my best friends, and we met because we fought. We had two fights. He won the first, I won the second, and then we just became boys because he was a big old blonde English dude, and I'm the
Yeah.
black dude, and so we just became boys uh,
Mm,
for the rest of my elementary school time. But in any case, what it did for me, and then my brother and sister went off to college. My parents got divorced, and so then it's just me and my mom.
mm,
And so even one year, we moved around six times in one year. It was, even though she kept me in the same school, she was an educator. But what it did for me, and kind of how God formed me, I was alone a lot, and I had to learn to be all right being different.
mm.
Because as San Diego's beginning to desegregate, they started bringing people from uh, kind of the more impoverished or disadvantaged area. They were bringing basically black kids, bringing them up to La Jolla. So they were looking at me like, "Oh, you think you're better than us? You
Yeah.
think you're this? You think it?" So I didn't fit in there.
Right.
And then the white kids were like,
Get
"We don't
out of
kick it
here.
with you." Exactly. So I'm like, "You get in where you fit in." But what it did was, I think God formed some things in me,
Mm,
and so honestly, by the time I was ready to become a Christian, the whole idea of being an outsider, peer pressure,
yep.
it didn't really phase me that much. The whole idea of persecution for the faith didn't phase me that much.
Yeah.
Um, and even the guy that studied the Bible with me, Jay Farnham and Nathan Arnett, those dudes were white, very different, but white. But I
Yep.
felt super comfortable. There was no issue. Again, you're in San Diego, you're going to be used to being in the minority. Um, but I never thought I'd be a minister. I was a Christian, and I was loving my relationship with God, learning more about the Bible. One dude called me Solomon because all I did was read Proverbs all the time, and and I stayed in the Old Testament a majority of the time. My first 6 months as a Christian, and at the time in our fellowship, our tribe, everybody, do you want to be a leader? Oh, you got to be a leader. You got to be. And I was like, no, I never led anything. I played sports, but I was never I was never a captain. I just always started, but I never was anything. No student government, none of that stuff. But then I
Yeah.
realized I cannot just help people outside the church, but I can help people inside the church.
Right.
And I was like, okay, God, let's do it. And that kind of took me on a journey. And then people, for the first time in my life, Jay Farnham, I remember he told me, he said, if I had 10 Tim Blakes, I could change the world.
Mm. Wow.
And I never heard anything
Wow.
like that.
Yeah.
And that inspired me. Sort of, you're like you're Mr. G,
Yep.
having someone in my life that way, and being able to see myself through their eyes,
Right.
like God did something,
Yeah.
and kind of took me on the trajectory where I caught a passion to be a leader in God's church, and in the church. When I say God's church, don't take that as we're the only church. We'll get into that later, but the whole
Right.
idea of being a leader in the church, serving. Went to Albuquerque on a mission team as we started a church out there. They ended up South Central LA. Came into paid ministry there after 9 years, and with a bunch of lessons learned. But in any case, we'll talk more about our history as we go.
Right.
Um, but there's several things that have kind of formed us in our walk with God. We'll talk about, actually, I got to tell Titus, I got to tell this story, please. Titus, so he gets baptized May. He was at May 6th, right?
May 6th,
May 6th,
2009.
2009. So in the summertime, July 4th,
Yep.
in New Britain, they would have fireworks at the park. and so, and it was packed, always packed. And so we
Yep.
park at the church. We're walking down to the park, the whole church walking down the park, and there's traffic, bumper to bumper. And
Yep.
so we're walking back and cars are coming back. And this is how I knew Titus really became a Christian. And again, please, just for some full and to understand kind of what we go through. A guy's in a car, white kid's in a car.
Hold on, let me pause.
Oh, go
So
ahead.
you said understand what we go through. I think this is the reality of what happens, right? Not
Yes.
every day, but sometimes it happens to Black Americans or just people who are not white. Situations like this happen, and so you can pick it back up.
Okay, thank you. So we're walking down the street. I'm just here for the comedic purposes. This may be traumatic if some of you hear it, but we're walking down the street, and I'm like, cool. Titus is able to see the church, everything. And the dude, correct me where I get it wrong, Titus, he looks out the window and goes, nigger!
Yep.
And then he drives up, but he gets stuck in traffic.
Yes.
We walk right by.
So we walk by this dude, right? And the cop heard it. Like the cop who was directing traffic heard it. And so I'm looking at this police officer like, what are you going to do about it? And she looks at me like, what do you want me to do about it? Like, we didn't say those things to each other, but it was kind of like,
it was there.
It was there. And so I start slowing down. And Tim says, that's how you know I became Christian. I was like, get out that car. You talking that tough talk in that car. Get out that car. And then Shayla and another woman came and they said, nah, come on, let's go. And they, and then like everybody else started turning around like, what were they talking to us? Like, because it was a group of us, right? Like we're all walking
from the church.
And from the church. And so it was interesting, just that little situation right there. I'm grateful, right, that I was with the group that I was with, because if I was with my non-church friends, I probably would have went down a little differently.
The Lord had you hemmed in.
Yep.
But okay, that was what I laughed so hard because I was like everything in Titus's soul, his flesh was rising up, but the spirit, it may not have been working from the inside out, but it was definitely working the outside in.
Yep.
So as we go, we gotta shut down. As we go, we are going to be, and I've mentioned you can go to, actually, let me just pull up the website right now for everyone. Here, let's see, we got it. There we go. Unfortunately, what you're seeing is the Eve edition, but you can go to www.unpresentableparts.com. If you see the tab there that says soon come, that'll show you kind of what we're talking about coming up. We're going to be we've got several different series coming up. Oh, let me get Titus back here. Come here, buddy. We got several different topics coming up, or series. Why I Hate My Church. It's not what you think it is.
Ooh.
But we're going to be doing a Why I Hate My Church series. We're going to be doing a Views from the Valley series based upon Psalm 23. And we're going to talk about kind of the what it's like in the valley in our Christianity. And we've got a few interviews. Because of timing, Titus is in Florida. He's working full time, and some of the times when we schedule interviews, we can't make it, so it may just be me at times, or vice versa.
Yes.
But in any case, we'll talk about anxiety, depression, and some of the dark sides of being a Christian. Not dark sides of being a Christian, but the valley parts.
The black side.
The black side. We're also going to have a series called Hermeneutics for Dummies. just talking about how we read the Bible, learning from very simply. I'm not a scholar. Titus is closer. I've learned more about my Bible in the past 11 years than I did the previous 23. And
Mm.
so, but I've realized our understanding of God is, if we don't know how to read the Bible, we make a deformed God, as
Mm.
opposed to allowing him to form himself in our understanding of the word. So, in any case, those are going to be some of the things. We're going to talk about sex. We'll talk about race. We'll talk about politics.
Yep.
For
Talk
those of
about
you that are part of the heart, where I'm a minister, I'm not trying to lose my job. So,
nope.
got to say that almost every podcast. But we are going to be having some real conversations. We're going to try to approach them delicately, and we're
Yes.
going to even learn how to talk about things.
Right.
We may not have answers for some things, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But we do want to talk. So we
Yep.
appreciate everybody. Titus,
Yep.
you got
No,
it.
and that's no, I appreciate everything you're saying, and to everybody listening, thank you for your time. This was more so just we're continuing to create a space where you guys are knowing who is in your ears or on your screen,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's what this was. We're continuing to dive in because I think the familiarity will help once we start getting into these more sensitive conversations, right? Because you may have been listening to this episode and you thought, well, what was the point of that? The point is we're continuing to invite you guys into the space where we want you to know more about us and our background and our makeup and some of the things that have influenced us, so that when we get into these conversations, I have a lot of white friends. When we get into these conversations, right, you're gonna
You really can't say that the other way around.
no.
If it was two of our white brothers on here and they're like, we have a lot of black friends, we'd be like, oh, word? Word? Oh, so you can say what you want because you got white friends. You got black friends, huh?
Right,
Anyway,
right.
sorry.
So you can say whatever you want. Nah, that was a joke. But I think like ultimately is just when we start talking about the more sensitive subjects, you guys know more about us and our background. And I intentionally mentioned how Mr. G is Italian. These things that we're talking about, they have all influenced who we are. And same thing with you guys who are listening. Like, you could probably start replaying your own stories and start thinking, this is who influenced me. Wow, like I didn't realize how pivotal of a moment this was when I was 12 or when I was 14 or 15, and they've shaped who I am today and how I view myself, as a follower of Jesus or a person just interested in God, or maybe just curious about God. Maybe that's where you are. But we're doing all of this to try to, again, invite you guys into this space, so that you guys can get to know us a little bit and hit us up. You can hit us up on Instagram, check out the YouTube, and you can email us, whatever it is, man, however you want to get in touch with us. You want to know more. If you have suggestions on what you think we should talk about, hit us up. We are not afraid. We ain't afraid.
We ain't scared.
We ain't scared.
As a great American philosopher once said, Bernie Mac, we ain't scared. Anyway, we'll stop there. I don't want to get fired. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. But again, www.unpresentablepartspod.com. You can actually reach us via email at unpresentablepartspod@gmail.com. So if you want to send in suggestions, there's also a contact page on the website, but we're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We got a TikTok account and all that, but we ain't used it yet. Twitter, X as well. Okay. Until next time.
Till next time, y'all. Peace.
Good flying, Walelo.